So when Laurel and Dory and I had a meeting to sense into the mundane magic container, there was this sense of not wanting to do a summit. It was like not another summit, not another peak experience, something. And so the sense of like what's the opposite of a summit, and then Nadir
Mhm.
dropping in. I think I'm mispronouncing it, just the whole thing, but Nader Nadir um, as the like the lowest point, the that place of dissolving. Um, and so this year there's this curiosity around what it is to gather together around not the highest point, but a space that can just include the incompleteness and the hibernation of winter and all of those other layers. Um, and so, and then the hearth fire idea was just to kind of invite in weaving from the different practitioners around just sensing into some of those themes together and speaking things that could be shared as part of inviting people in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I am grateful for you all's leadership and kind of sensitivity to like tuning into a different field energetically. And I think where where I sense myself in relationship to that energy field is just something that I've observed in myself and in my sphere over time. Um, like the stories get told about the moments on the mountaintop, um, and these like peak experiences are, the sexiest ones to come back and share to our friends. And I really relate to that. I think particularly my spiritual path was um had some significant like accelerating peak moments. Um and I feel grateful for those, and I think they had an important place. And even at the time, I remember having this thought like most of life takes place between like mountaintop to mountaintop, if mountaintop is even a part of it, right? Like most of life is somewhere on the downhill or the uphill or in the valley itself. Um, and so it does feel really important to, I was about to say to lift up, or to just go down into the valleys, and bring awareness to the just the fact of how much of life happens there. Um, and I think I've also observed for myself, I kind of reflect now, like, and I don't want to take away from or sort of describe it as like a hierarchy of experiences or something. I guess I can just say for me, the these peak experiences were followed by some profound valley experiences that left me reflecting on those previous experiences, um, in a kind of bewildered way. Like, even if abstractly I knew like, okay, we don't live on the mountaintop. There were periods that followed of like complete upheaval or complete dissolving of what I thought I knew that was have been so disorienting. Um, and that what was like the context I had around previous peak experience did not meet the moment in those later experiences. And I imagine that will continue. Like the context I have now will not be enough for something I may experience down the road and all the way up until I die, you know? And I think the journey for me has been like expanding context more and more or getting more creative around it. And in some ways coming to a place like where there's kind of an absolute zero of meaning making or of storytelling. Um, where I think in just moment, I mean, I don't even think as embodied as beings that live in bodies, we can even like touch into this place for very long, if at all. That that's just like these this sort of raw um I mean, I don't I don't have the words for it, but sort of these raw encounters with an aspect of reality that
Mm-hmm.
that kind of goes beyond story or beyond meaning making or pre any of that. And I don't mean to make this so abstract, but like but this the sense that I am gathering from that is, we I mean we have metaphors for it in a lot of our different traditions and in the natural world, the the compost, the dead of winter, um, the practice I'll be leading the um, in the mundane magic weekend is on the void. But what feels so like, I don't know, paradoxical or like contradicting in it is like the void, or like the void is the absence of story or the absence of metaphor, the absence of meaning making, the total dissolution. Like, I don't think we can actually know what it feels like to be composted until we're composting, you know? And then and then and then it's sort of like, no, this was not what I meant. Or like, um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, those are some starting points I'm having, and just like, which I think too, in the being a part of the sort of spiritual coaching, teaching world or whatever, um, online marketplace, like it's, I don't think the opposite of peak experience sells very well. And and I know for my even for myself, like during some of these periods, I felt a real like, oh, I don't know anything. I don't know anything anymore. How the fuck am I supposed to like be I'm guiding people through something? I was like in the middle of a year-long program a couple years ago that I was facilitating, and we just had this complete like existential meltdown of everything I felt like I knew to be true. And I was like, I just felt like definitely like a fraud. And then also like, how do I continue to lead with integrity? Um, And I remember saying, I ended up just sharing with the group, like, this is what's going on for me. I feel like a priestess who's lost her faith. And what am I supposed to do with that? Or like, and I had one of my like community members reflect back to me, like, that is the person that I want to not follow, but like, I choose you. Like, I still choose you. I'll take the priest with no faith over the, I guess overconfident, like someone with a story to sell. And I think I'm going to forget the theologian who says this. It might be Paul Tillich. I'll have to double check, but who talks about like the opposite, um, the opposite of faith isn't doubt. The opposite of faith is certainty, right? And so when we are sure about something, no faith required, you know? And I think there's a lot of, I'm kind of just riffing now, but
I'm loving it. Yeah. Bring it.
I just think to tie it to something global right now, like and my own ancestral tradition of Christianity, like there's been this over calcification in my view of faith as something sold as certainty. And I think there's been this sort of psychological need of many of ancestors of the Western nation or European nation refugees and migrants and colonizers, a psychological need for certainty, which is a developmental like semi-adolescent stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think having to get more real in myself about like existing in doubt, existing in unknowing, um, and over time getting more comfortable in playing with those as part of the field, as part of the characters of the field in an animist way. Uncertainty has its own energetic field that can I kind of push up against or play with or make an alter to and parse out sort of the labels that I have put on it to kind of help contain the real unsettling reality that uncertainty is with us, for example. Um, stories like, oh, if I feel uncertainty, there must be something wrong, or it must be something I have to fix, or I need to I need to get more financially secure so I can not feel this way. And in reality, that is part of our lived reality. Um, I'm going to pause there because I said a lot of things, but
Ah,
is it more connected to anything that you want to connect it to?
oh my gosh. Thank you so much for just opening up those worlds. It's like so juicy. And I love just like there's an immediate invitation into sort of the fullness of the process that I think gets gated out when we just focus on the peak experiences. Um, hmm. Yeah, well, I think just like multiple places I want to like open. Um, the part about the not knowing, I think there's something about those spaces where like that's actually where the new comes in and where things integrate is like when the faith goes away, when or the certainty goes away. Um, yeah, and it's like there's not a pattern, there's not a guide for what's happening. Like something is in that cannot be seen space. Um, yeah, there's so much about just the like being able to like be in leadership and tending of space that that is also included.
Hmm.
Like I just in this 6 month exploration into the Nornir that just happened, is like very much like experimental ritual practice, and I feel like there were these like waves of that, like I don't know what I'm doing now, like the meaning kind of would go away, or it would be very um the part of me that it like was used to sort of feeling a sense of anchoring, like wouldn't be able to anchor into cognitive things.
Hmm.
um and so I don't know, there's been this really interesting dance with I think especially with kind of connecting to primordial patterns, um, around it's like the dissolving of the cognitive, but still
Hmm.
feeling like there's a contact with what is real.
Hmm.
Whether that's like through the breath, through like
Yeah.
there's a and it's like that with constellations work too. Of like often things will happen and it'll feel like I'm facilitating and things get stuck, or there's like a trauma in the family system that just seems immovable, um, and you have to just be in the not knowing with it until whatever the movement is comes. Um, and I think that it's easier often to do that with other people. Like if there's a context around it where that's also invited in. I think the times where it gets really hard are when it's like ongoing creative process or some sort of emergent process where it's like an individual journey of the fluctuations of that. Because it, like, I feel like now I'm like starting to remember when my system does the flail of like I don't know what I'm doing, or it all went away, or the thing. Um, Now there's at least a recognition of like, oh, that's a response to something which is part of the thing. It's not a doing wrong or something that's outside
Right.
of the journey.
Right.
Yeah. And it's almost like because culturally so often the not knowing space is like not welcomed in, um, there's this whole second layer of like the wrongness or the shame or the failure, the stories about it. Um, yeah, so there's something about like making it ordinary, allowing it to be an ordinary part of just the relational space
Right.
also.
Yeah, because not knowing that you're in potentiality at that, like that is the primordial
Yeah.
creative loop, um, which is uncomfortable in its amorphousness. Um, and I think that the framing and ordinariness, at least that I'm connecting to as you're sharing that, has been like, I mean, even Nadir as a opposition to peak. There is, I'm just reflecting from what I was sharing, like, sorry if you hear my dog.
Okay, my dog's been panting this whole time, so
I think I saw them kind of shaking the screen.
yeah, the camera's shaking, and she won't. I've tried to like subtly push her
Yeah, no, that's
that
great.
she can go sit someplace else, but she's like, I'm sitting right here, and I'm gonna keep panting. So
Oh,
that's
I'm
what's
part of
happening.
Fireside Chat. Just that there is often an intensity to like that the bottom of the valley, right? And then like, but the the in between of that, like I feel like I had to during this period I'm thinking about, like I had to really go back to the basics of nervous system management and like beginner hatha yoga. Like I felt like I and those I had to kind of contain it, like there was this feeling of complete undoing so much that I needed some really basic rhythms as buoys or just sort of anchors to to allow the the unknowing to be there and to normalize that in my immediate spheres and um, just like real basic body tending and space tending and kind of letting myself be carried by those rhythms. Like at this point I didn't at that point I felt like I'd been doing so much of my practice long enough that they didn't feel difficult to continue with, which I was really grateful for. um, and so there I did feel like there could be this container which included things just like washing my dishes at the end of the day and making my bed every morning. And I do think that's one thing that brings us back to yeah all the middle ground um, that makes up the bulk of life and and the rhythms in that seem so boring and yet are like the absolutely essential scaffolding for all of life, all of life. Like, um, yeah, like who's making food while people are in their Aya journey, or
Yeah.
who's holding babies while we're like others of us are marching. Like there's I think kind of what I love about the summit is this sort of um
The Nadir.
yeah. Oh, sorry. The non-summit.
I know, I do it too sometimes. I'm like,
What I love about the Nadir is just like bringing awareness to the unseen things that keep life going. Um,
yes.
so and I think I like the arc that I've been on just in my life recently has been really humbling in returning to an appreciation of that for myself. Um, and um, just sort of right sizing, I think, is a word that kind of gets tossed around these days, but like just a right sizing of like um, what it means to be a spiritual person, what it means to like be in leadership, what it means to be um, like just a person. And I think I don't know, I think we just need more recognition of that, especially in this age of like celebrity tyrants and things like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, there's like, I kind of feel like whatever feels strange to call it a spiritual journey, but like the last several years of rooting into ecosystemic relationality and relationality with body and ancestors and all of those layers. Um, so much of it, like the actual like movement of it, really just is about like, can I inhabit my daily life, my daily relationships, like with fullness, with aliveness, like,
Yeah.
and really tune to like the expressions of those that are bringing nourishment and bringing play, and
Yeah.
yeah, just like meeting what is. um yeah, I get this image of like, the water actually being able to seep into the soil being able to receive it.
Mhm. I was in a call earlier today about like mutual aid and kind of preparing our communities for the next 4 years. Not that it's radically different than it has been, there, but we predict there will be some significant overt things. And one of the things one person said was just about like preparing to be able to say yes, and not yet knowing maybe what the yes will be for. Um, and that really stuck with me, and it kind of feels like what you're describing is like an attunement to aliveness, that and that's really probably a better word than like being on a spiritual journey. It's being on being alive.
Are they different? Are they the same? Woo!
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But like the kind of constant fine tuning of what it means to be attuned to the current of aliveness, um, that makes many possible responses available in any one moment. Um, and that makes any one moment like rich with the potential of like all moments. I don't know if I'm trying too hard to say something like meaningful in that, but like maybe it's connected to like in kind of dominant Western culture, this an overall blanket of numbness, so that in
Yeah,
order to feel anything, we have to go for the high highs and low lows.
right.
And like thawing that numbness to the degree to a place where we have more sensitivity to the in-betweens. Um, but it also looks less there's less drama, there's less like fantastic storylines. Um,
Yeah, the like, and I really thank you for just the kind of recalibrating, opening around, because it's like, yeah, it's like the high highs and the low lows are still the same thing in some ways. I was thinking when you originally started talking, I was also thinking about grief ritual work, which I've had like a whole process around. That was like how I entered like spiritual ritual spaces 7, 8 years ago now.
I remember that, yeah.
And yeah, and was like really like learned to facilitate grief rituals and was really connected to that kind of tone and holding. And then I realized that the like daily life dissociation and the kind of like energetic bracing patterns were still how I was living. Like even with like the space to drop into grief in
Right.
these community settings. And so that relating to somatics and relating to animism and like all of these processes around nourishment and connecting to vitality and connecting to creativity, I think have all been ways to like create conditions where the grief is welcome, but the grief isn't doesn't take up the whole frame either.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That tracks with some of the grief spaces I've been working in with my community, where we call it just making room for what is. And we name grief specifically because it's so exiled from our culture. But I'll often just say, like, nothing might happen in this time. You may just be like kind of here and might feel like going through some motions. There's the option. We try to, prime the conditions. If something wants to come, it can come, and but it might not be today, and might not be the thing you thought you were here for. And I do think there's some, grief rituals not that not that popular. Like, um, there's some anxiety to just the uncertainty of that. And so I mean, one of my hopes for like this experience is sort of reacclimating or re expanding capacity for us to be in open space to, even like winter is hard. I find it's even hard for me to like actually slow down. And I have been really conscious about nurturing that and nurturing a life rhythm oriented towards that. And I know if I wasn't so deliberate and so conscious, it wouldn't happen. Um, so the open space, the boredom, the daydreaming, the night dreaming, the yin, I think all of those things we actually have to like regain a tolerance for.
Yeah, the like going through the layer of dissociation and like things actually thawing and coming back to life is like there are parts of that that are really uncomfortable and kind of crunchy and just like not like I feel like I'm kind of in a dance with that with my creative practice with some things that have been dormant for a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's something
And
about
like
how
just that like the flavor of nourishment there may be unfamiliar at first.
yeah, and like the like meeting of vacancy or meeting of absence or a space that has not had feeling in a long time. Yeah.
Feeling mostly complete.
Yeah, I had one more question, if that is welcome.
Yeah.
Um, it's just if there's a moment of nadir or that kind of primordial dissolving that comes up for you as a moment that was nourishing that you'd like to share.
Mm. Yeah. There's two that come to mind. The first one that came was painful and nourishing. And this was during like kind of a dissolving I was going through about 7 years ago. Those seem to be the cycles. I have like 3 year cycles and 7 year cycles. 7, almost 8 years. And I had a lot of things in my world kind of turning upside down. And I remember getting like just some like body work from a friend. I was on like their living room couch getting some body work, and my imagination took me into this cave where like what it felt like at that time was I was, like kind of army crawling through a pitch black cave, and none of my senses of orienting or like even sort of how to gather data and like understand what was going on, like none of those senses seemed to be working. um, and so I'm imagining like kind of bumbling around this cave, and I remember hearing behind me just like, we're right here, like we're right here. um, and there was both this like there was an irritation honestly in it. So I was like, okay, so can you help a sister out? But there was also this relief, like, okay, this isn't I'm this is an absence. There's an absence of what has been familiar, but I'm not I haven't been abandoned. Um, and there is a teaching about that. I mean, this is very commonly known at this point, but like the kind of the dark night of the soul teaching from St. John of the Cross really has to do with like when God knows, you're past the stage of needing to feed at the breast. They will wean you, and you will protest. And so there is this, I don't know, there is a rightness to the withdrawal or to the absence, not a rightness necessarily, but a sequence. Um, and it's, at least in this tradition, the teaching is that like that's God saying, I trust you now to walk on your own feet, to like hold yourself, to feed yourself, to find your way. And of course, when you're in it, fuck that. Like, I do not believe it, and don't try to feed me that line. Um, but I think in those moments when I could not fight being in the darkness, there was something there. Um, and the sense I had was like something else is coming, and I just don't know what it is yet. Um, and is there some freedom in that? Like, I don't have to control or make it happen. Something else is coming. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I don't need to tell my other one. Yeah.
Mm, thank you.
Is there something that comes to mind for you?
Hmm. Yeah, there's been something that's been kind of present the whole time. Speaking of 7 year cycles, also, um, I had a time when I went to travel in England. And this was before I, I have since become a lot more connected to ancestral practice. But in retrospect, there's a sense that that time was really seeking a sense of ancestry and a sense of home.
Mm-hmm.
And I had several experiences of kind of being like connected to ritual dreaming and really like wide things coming through me. And then I came home to Minnesota and had like classic dark night of the soul, life falling apart, couldn't work, chronic illness, all the things, deep at the time what was being labeled as depression. Um, and for a couple months, it was like the only thing that I could do was go to this mosaic studio in the bottom of the local church. My mom was helping with a mosaic project, and I worked on this mosaic that I sketched out this drawing of this figure and had no idea where it came from or what it meant, and I made this mosaic, which is still right here.
Mm.
And it has since been for like the last 7 years has been like every altar I've had that being comes with. Um, and it was like there was something about taking the fragments of glass and like putting them together into this being that was like putting myself back into wholeness
Yeah.
and feeling that relationship. Um, and then it was like a couple years later that I started to learn about the Nornir, who tend the roots of the tree of life in Norse mythology, and are at they come with this wellspring, the well of Erd. Um, and I, looked at this piece of art and was like, oh, that's the Nornir. That's who came through very strongly when I needed someone to like come through and speak to me. Um, and there's been something about that communication where it's like completely not cognitive. And anytime I try and cognitively grasp the wholeness of it, it it fragments again. But that moment in the creation of that mosaic feels like it was like the kind of guiding pattern that has like all of my work is sort of fractalizing from there.
That's really cool.
Well, thank you. I feel like we have fed to this creature that is
Yeah.
the mundane magic Nadir being.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they feel satisfied for now.
Yes.
Thank you, Shante. It's really sweet to talk with you and share space and get back into the dream
Yeah.
frequency.
It's really lovely to land with you too. Yeah, I'm kind of delighted by just how like, okay, we're dreaming now. We're gonna do the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so much of this is the outpouring of that primordial dreaming. Like all of our creativity comes so much comes from nothing. No thing, no one thing. Um,
Yeah.
y'all were just like, we have this idea, we have this dream, we have this
It's actually, and actually
sensitivity to some.
because it was also like literally we had that first Zoom call and it was like we were coming together because Laurel was like, I don't know if I want to do it this year. And so there was like a definite feeling of like, are we gonna maybe we will do nothing this year. And then it came
Mm,
through. It's like, oh
okay.
no, here's the nothing is actually this whole thing. But
Yeah,
yeah, it was like really touching that moment of it could also be nothing.
Yes. We could do 4 days of Shavasana.
That may happen.
I know. Can't say it won't. Yeah.
Emptiness, nothingness, is not a space of desolation. It is a place of infinite possibility, infinite creation. The fertile womb of the void is that space in which we birth our next selves. Who will you be? Let's find out.